I died at my desk at 34 years old. Not literally, of course. My heart was still beating. My lungs were still drawing air. But the person I was, the passionate, driven, creative individual who believed her work could change the world, was gone. In her place was a hollow shell, a ghost powered by caffeine and cortisol, haunted by the phantom ping of unread emails. That moment, staring at a spreadsheet that blurred into a meaningless grid of numbers, was the culmination of a silent, agonizing descent. It was also the beginning of a 14-year quest, a journey into the heart of a modern epidemic, a quest to understand the anatomy of burnout, what causes it, why it holds on with such a vicious grip, and, most importantly, how we can finally begin to heal. My journey started with a single, burning question. Why? Why did I, and so many others like me, the ones who gave everything, end up with nothing left to give? The modern workplace is a battlefield littered with the casualties of this silent epidemic, and I was determined to map its pathology. What I found was a predictable, almost tragic pattern of decay, a model I came to call the B-Doc. Burnout during organizational change. It's a 5-act play of the soul's slow erosion. It begins, as all great endeavors do, with hope. You join a company or a project with a fire in your belly. You see the vision, you believe in the mission. You're ready to give 110%. But that hope soon curdles into frustration as promises are broken and support evaporates. Frustration hardens into a bitter anger at the system that consumes your passion. That anger then fades into a hollow apathy, a protective numbness. Finally, the descent completes, leaving you in the cold, desolate landscape of full-blown burnout. The cruelest irony I uncovered is that this path is most often trod by the brightest stars. It's the high achievers, the ones who pour their very essence into their work, who are the most susceptible. They are the change targets, the employees expected to absorb the impact of endless restructuring, shifting priorities, and unrealistic demands. For them, the descent from a vibrant, engaged professional to a depleted shell can be terrifyingly swift, sometimes taking as little as 6 months. Yet the climb back is a slow, arduous journey, a recovery that often stretches across 2 agonizing years. It's a profound imbalance, a rapid fall, followed by a painfully slow ascent from the abyss. This temporal distortion is a key feature of the trauma, where time itself feels warped by the experience. Through my research, I found that the common narrative around burnout is dangerously misleading. We're told it's about personal failure, poor time management, a lack of resilience, an inability to say no. But the data tells a different story. Burnout is rarely a consequence of mere work overload. Instead, its roots run deep into the organizational soil. The primary drivers are systemic failures, poor, uncommunicative leadership that offers no clear direction, and a pervasive lack of organizational caring. It's the feeling of being a disposable cog in a machine that doesn't value your humanity, a feeling that no amount of personal productivity hacking can fix. This realization shifted my focus from individual blame to systemic dysfunction. It's not that the workers are broken, it's that the workplace is. The reason recovery is so difficult, why burnout clings to its victims with such a vicious grip, can be explained by what I call the burnout triumvirate. It's a toxic trifecta of factors that create a near inescapable prison. First, there's the personality type. The overachievers, the perfectionists, the Type A individuals whose self-worth is inextricably linked to their professional accomplishments. They are genetically wired to push themselves beyond their limits. Second, there are the severe physical symptoms that manifest from chronic stress, profound exhaustion that sleep cannot cure, compromised immune systems, chronic diseases, and, in the most extreme cases, even stress-induced cancers. The body keeps the score, and the bill is devastating. Finally, there are the toxic organizational factors that make escape impossible. mandatory overtime, a culture of long hours that blurs the line between work and life, and the digital tether of smartphones that denies any chance to truly disconnect and recover. These three forces converge, locking individuals in a state of perpetual depletion. Even when an employee manages to escape a toxic job, the scars remain. This phenomenon is known as residual burnout. Long after leaving a particular company or even an entire industry, the individual remains hypersensitive to the triggers that caused their initial collapse. A demanding project, a vaguely critical email, or the pressure of an impending deadline can cause a full-blown relapse, plunging them back into the familiar state of exhaustion, cynicism, and hopelessness. It's as if the nervous system has been permanently rewired for a state of high alert, unable to distinguish between a genuine threat and the faint echo of a past trauma. The ghost of the old workplace follows you, a haunting reminder of your vulnerability. This is where the connection becomes chillingly clear. The characteristics of burnout, its causes, its symptoms, its lingering after-effects, bear a striking and undeniable resemblance to another, more formally recognized condition: post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Think about the parallels. Both are triggered by exposure to extreme, prolonged stress from which there is no perceived escape. Both are defined by a profound sense of helplessness and a loss of control. The symptomology overlaps almost perfectly. Emotional numbness, chronic exhaustion, sleep disturbances, depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, and a persistent avoidance of any stimuli that recall the traumatic environment. When we reframe burnout not as a simple case of being overworked, but as a form of psychological injury inflicted by traumatic workplace environment, the entire conversation changes. It is not a personal failing, it is a response to an injury. If we accept this premise, that severe chronic burnout is a form of workplace-induced PTSD, then the legal and ethical implications are monumental. The Americans with Disabilities Act amendments. Act, or the ADAAA, mandates that employers provide reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities, including mental health conditions like PTSD. Recognizing burnout under this framework would no longer make employee well-being a matter of corporate goodwill or a perk offered by progressive companies. It would make it a legal obligation. This isn't a minor tweak, it's a fundamental paradigm shift. Such accommodations would revolutionize company policies and practices. Imagine a world where mandatory, uninterrupted vacation time is the law, not a suggestion. A world where cultures of recognition and appreciation are systematically fostered because their absence is understood as a direct contributor to psychological injury. Envision workplaces that are legally required to implement policies that prevent digital tethering after hours, ensuring true downtime. The result of these mandated changes would not be a loss of productivity, but its opposite. We would see a surge in creativity and innovation as minds are allowed to rest and recharge. We would witness a dramatic increase in workforce satisfaction and loyalty. By legally protecting employees from the conditions that cause burnout, we would, in fact, be creating the very foundation for a healthier, more productive, and more humane economy. Ultimately, burnout is the canary in the coal mine. It is the first, most visceral signal of a deeply dysfunctional organization. The exhaustion and cynicism of a single employee are symptomatic of larger systemic issues that will inevitably lead to missed deadlines, lost opportunities, poor customer service, catastrophic business decisions, and a litany of potential lawsuits. A workforce on the brink of collapse cannot innovate, it cannot compete, and it cannot serve. Employers now face a critical choice. They can wait for the wave of ADA lawsuits and be forced into compliance, or they can act proactively. They can choose to recognize the humanity of their employees and foster an environment where people can thrive, not just survive. The path forward is not about adding another wellness app or a mindfulness seminar. It is about fundamentally re-architecting the workplace to honor the psychological and physical limits of the human beings who power it. The quest that began with my own personal collapse has led me here, to this simple, unavoidable truth. Healing burnout isn't just about saving individuals, it's about saving the very soul of our organizations. The question is no longer whether we can afford to do it, but whether we can afford not to.